In 1998, a 26-year-old father from Detroit was sleeping on the floor of a mobile home he'd been evicted from. He had a daughter he could barely afford to feed, a rap career that had gone nowhere, and a debut album that sold fewer than 1,000 copies. He was broke, he was desperate, and he was one bad decision away from giving up entirely. Fast forward to today, that same man, Marshall Bruce Mathers III, sits on a fortune estimated at $250 million, 15 Grammy Awards, over 220 million records sold worldwide, a restaurant in his hometown, a record label that launched one of hip-hop's biggest names, and a legacy that changed music forever. But here's what makes Eminem's story different from every other rags to riches tale you've heard. He didn't get rich by flashing money, he didn't buy mansions in Beverly Hills or throw parties on yachts. In fact, Eminem once called his manager to ask if he could afford a Rolex. He bought it, he never wears it, he's scared of scratching it. That one anecdote tells you everything about how a kid from 8 Mile built one of the most structurally sound fortunes in music history. This is the story of how Eminem went from broke to $250 million, and the lessons in that journey might just change how you think about success, money, and what it really takes to make it. To understand how Eminem built a $250 million empire, you have to understand where he started, and he started at rock bottom. Born Marshall Bruce Mathers III on October 17, 1972 in St. Joseph, Missouri, his father abandoned the family when he was just a toddler. He was raised by his mother Debbie, bouncing between Missouri and Michigan, moving so frequently that he changed schools 2 or 3 times a year. The family lived in housing projects, trailer parks, and working-class neighborhoods where they were often one of only a handful of white families on the block. School was a nightmare. He was beaten up in bathrooms, shoved into lockers, and tormented simply for being the new kid. By the time he was in 9th grade, he had been held back not once, not twice, but 3 times. At 17, he dropped out entirely, but music gave him something to hold on to. At 14, he began rapping in underground clubs in Detroit, and he discovered something that would become his superpower. He could write. He could put words together in ways nobody else could. As he later explained, other kids might have had better clothes or more girlfriends, but they couldn't do what he could do with a pen. For years, Eminem worked dead-end jobs to survive. He was a short-order cook at Gilbert's Lodge in Michigan, flipping burgers and washing dishes alongside fellow D1 member Mr. Porter. He worked in a factory not unlike the character he would later play in 8 Mile. He worked nearly 60 hours a week just to make ends meet, and through it all, he rapped. He battled in underground competitions, pouring every ounce of frustration and anger into his lyrics. In 1997, he competed in the Rap Olympics and came in 2nd place. He was noticed, but nobody was signing him. His debut album, Infinite, released in 1996, was a commercial failure. It sold fewer than 1,000 copies. The industry consensus was clear: white rappers didn't sell. He was laughed at, dismissed, told he would never make it. By his early 20s, Eminem was a father, flat broke and suicidal. He had a daughter to provide for and no way to do it. The weight of poverty, failure, and rejection was crushing him. But here's the thing about hitting absolute rock bottom: when you are already at the lowest point, you have nothing left to lose, and that's exactly when everything changed. In 1997, Eminem recorded the Slim Shady EP. It was raw, angry, and unlike anything else in hip-hop. The alter ego of Slim Shady was born, a dark, twisted version of himself that allowed him to say things he could never say as Marshall Mathers. That demo tape eventually made its way to the right ears. Jimmy Iovine, the CEO of Interscope Records, heard it, and then he played it for Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre later said he heard the tape and was stunned. He couldn't believe what he was listening to. He signed Eminem on the spot. In 1999, the Slim Shady LP dropped. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and went quadruple platinum. My Name Is became Eminem's first entry on the Billboard Hot 100, and at the 2000 Grammy Awards, he won Best Rap Album and Best Rap Solo Performance. But that was just the beginning. The Marshall Mathers LP followed in 2000. It sold 1.76 million copies in its first week, a record for the fastest-selling solo album in US history. It was the kind of commercial explosion that the music industry had never seen from a rapper. Then came the Eminem Show in 2002. It sold over 1 million copies in its first week, went on to become the best-selling album worldwide of that year, and to this day stands as the best-selling hip-hop album of all time. In 2002, Eminem starred in 8 Mile, a semi-autobiographical film that followed his journey from the trailer parks of Detroit to the rap battle stage. The film grossed over $242 million worldwide, and the soundtrack's lead single, Lose Yourself, won the Academy Award for Best Original Song, making Eminem the first hip-hop artist to ever win an Oscar. In just 3 years, Eminem had gone from a broke, suicidal father working at a diner to one of the most famous and successful musicians on the planet. The numbers are staggering: over 220 million records sold worldwide, 15 Grammy Awards and 47 nominations, 5 #1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100, and a record that still stands, the first musical act to have 10 consecutive albums debut at #1 on the Billboard 200. But here's where the story gets interesting and where the real lesson about wealth begins. Because the money from those record sales, a lot of it almost slipped through his fingers. By 2007, Eminem was on top of the world and completely falling apart. For years, he had been addicted to prescription drugs, Vicodin, Valium, Ambien. He was taking anything anybody would give him. The addiction had wiped out years of his life. He later said Ambien alone cost him 5 years. He was consuming massive amounts of pills daily and his health was deteriorating rapidly. Then came the overdose. Methadone, he nearly died. He was rushed to the hospital and doctors told him he was 2 hours from death. There were real fears that he might have suffered brain damage. He entered rehab and finally got clean in April 2008. Recovery wasn't just the title of his next album, it was his reality. In 2010, he released Recovery, which became the best-selling album worldwide of that year. He had not only survived, he had come back stronger. He has now been sober for over 17 years. And here's the financial lesson that rarely gets discussed in net worth profiles. Addiction doesn't just destroy your health, it destroys your financial judgment, it burns through cash, it makes you vulnerable to predatory deals that can cost you millions. Eminem's clean years coincided directly with his net worth climbing from roughly $120 million in 2012 to $250 million today. As he put it with his characteristic candor, "I save a lot of money by not buying drugs anymore." But how exactly does a rapper build a $250 million fortune, and more importantly, how does he keep it? It comes down to something most people don't think about when they see a celebrity's net worth: diversification. First, there's the music itself. Digital sales alone have generated over $107.5 million. Streaming provides ongoing passive income. His catalog on Spotify alone has accumulated over 3.6 billion streams. In a typical non-touring year, he earns roughly $20 million. During touring years, that number jumps to $30 to $50 million. Then there's Shady Records, the label he co-founded in 1999. It launched the careers of artists like 50 Cent, whose debut album sold over 12 million copies worldwide. Every artist on that label generates revenue for the label owner. He invested early in Detroit-based companies like StockX, the sneaker stock market. He opened Mom's Spaghetti, a restaurant in his hometown that started as a pop-up and became a permanent fixture. He owns the rights to his music catalog, unlike many artists who sell theirs off for quick cash. And here's the key: he didn't blow his money on depreciating assets. While other rappers from the bling era spent millions on cars and jewelry and mansions in California only to fade into bankruptcy, Eminem stayed in Detroit. He lives in a guarded compound in Clinton Township, Michigan. He bought it for $4.75 million in 2003. He didn't flip it, he didn't buy 10 more, he stayed put. He drives past his old neighborhoods to remind himself where he came from. He doesn't play the Hollywood game. He doesn't flip mansions in Calabasas. He sits in his studio, manages his portfolio, and watches the royalties roll in. So what's the lesson in all of this? It's not just about the money. It's about what it takes to get there and what it takes to keep it. Eminem's story is a reminder that success rarely happens overnight, no matter how much it looks like it does. For most of the world, it seemed like Eminem became famous instantly. But he worked diligently for decades before breaking through. He was battle rapping at 14, working odd jobs through his 20s, and releasing albums that nobody bought before he ever sold 1 million copies. His story is a reminder that rejection isn't the end. Industry consensus said white rappers didn't sell. He proved them wrong. He was told he'd never make it in a predominantly African American art form. He broke down those barriers. His story is a reminder that you can come back from anything. He nearly died from an overdose. He lost years of his life to addiction and he rebuilt himself from the ground up. And his story is a reminder that wealth isn't just about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. He didn't buy 20 cars, he didn't buy a private jet, he didn't try to impress anyone with his money. He invested in himself, in his catalog, in his hometown, and in businesses that would continue to generate income long after the hits stopped coming. Today, at 53 years old, Eminem is still releasing music that debuts at number 1. He's still winning Grammy nominations, he's still pushing himself creatively, and he's still, by all accounts, the same frugal, focus-driven man who once washed dishes at Gilbert's Lodge for minimum wage. He once said that he still drives by his old houses in Detroit just to remember. Just to remind himself of where he came from and how far he's traveled. That's the real success story. Not the $250 million, not the Grammys, not the records. It's the journey from the trailer park to the top of the world. The refusal to give up when everyone told him he couldn't do it. The discipline to keep his head down and his money safe when everyone around him was losing theirs. Marshall Mathers went from broke to $250 million, but the real wealth? That's not in the bank account, it's in the legacy he built, the barriers he broke, and the millions of people he inspired to believe that no matter how far down you are, you can always find a way back up.